All members, please come to the chamber. Thank you. Morning, everyone. I'd like to call the committee to order. Okay, as customary, we start with a prayer. I'll ask our Honorable Minister for Investment to lead us in prayer.
Thank you, O Lord, for gathering us here today to deliberate on financial matters for this country. Let us do so, dear Lord, with strength, with confidence, with collaboration, all in the best interest of taking the country and the people of the Cayman Islands forward to the best of our abilities. We humbly pray. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Good morning, honorable members of the committee. We have a quorum, so the committee can commence its meeting. As members will be aware, the quorum of Finance Committee is 10 members, excluding myself as the chairperson. 10 members, a simple majority of our total 19 members in Parliament. The purpose of this meeting, members, is to consider items shown on the hard copy material that have been distributed to all honorable members. I just want to, at this point, first apologize to all members of the House in terms of just getting the schedule this morning. There were still a lot of last-minute changes that were being made last night as a result of the cabinet meeting yesterday, so I do apologize to all members of this committee for just receiving the schedule right now, and also to the opposition also. Sorry. Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I appreciate all of the circumstances leading up to today's meeting and the delays, but on respectfully I ask that we get a little bit more time to discuss these items, as this morning is the first that we've seen them. The leader just had an opportunity to peruse them, and we'd like a few minutes just to go through it as a group.
Yeah, what I said to the leader this morning, we do recognize that there are some particular, like the COVID expenses and so forth, which will require more time. But like for those that we pretty much already have an agreement with, we can just go through those, like those that were done with agreement with yourselves, and then those that you need more time for, we can just push those to the end and just have a longer break during lunchtime to at least we can get some business completed, and then have a longer break period for the more difficult stuff that require more time. So if you want, we can probably just break for 5 minutes right now. I can have a discussion with the leader and see which ones he wants to push back till after lunch, and we have a longer lunch break. That will then give you more time for the ones that you have a bigger issue with. But I think like the ones that we agree with, I think those will be pretty straightforward.
Mr. Chairman, good morning to you, sir, and to the rest of colleagues. We did have the discussion. I did ask that we consider delaying the start this month. We haven't seen anything. That's before here. I've leafed through it. There are a number of things there I think that would be non-controversial, but I mean, we've had no discussions, no, even a cursory look at this stuff. And so, I mean, I was thinking more longer, a little bit more than 5 minutes to really look at this and see where it is we think we'd like to go, and what's important for us to investigate and to really question. I just feel we're not serving the public in the right way by just by coming here cold to look at numbers. So I mean, I really am pleading, sir, for a little bit more time for us to look at this, and before we delve into it. I'd sent you a message earlier today asking if we could delay it or even postpone it, because I mean, with this, we're looking. I'm just off. My first blush is looking at this somewhere between $50–60 million worth of additional expenditure. And I only just see the breakdown for the most significant appropriation that we're seeking here of some $28 million for COVID-related stuff. I'm struggling for us to be able to really do justice here today, sir, so I'm just pleading for some more time.
I completely understand, Mr. Chairman, and that's the reason I said to you, like one item alone is roughly half the appropriations that we're looking at today. And that's the reason I'm saying we can get the other ones out, the easier ones out, which I can be happy to go through with you right now, and then the ones that require more time, we just take a 2-3 hour break for lunch. That will give you the opportunity to look at the other ones. But the main thing for us is that, I mean, we also have other public servants here that, and I do understand your situation, but we have other public servants here for items that are straightforward, I think that we have already agreed on. I think we can get out of the way, and we can always push back much later, take a much longer break time during lunch to give you sufficient time to look at those. So like the COVID one, I'd be prepared to push that back. And because there are some larger ones, but the smaller ones, I think we can just get out of the way now. So at least we can release the public servants who are there to answer those questions.
So, Mr. Chair, if I hear you correctly, you're insisting then that we move forward as we are right now?
Well, for the smaller ones, if you can tell me which ones you need more time on, we can just push those to the back of the agenda and take a longer break as soon as we finish the simple ones, and then we'll just do the complicated ones after.
Give me a minute.
In the meantime, Mr. Chairman, on a procedural matter and probably more accepted news, this is to advise all members that a bell system has been installed in the Parliament, the purpose of which is to inform members and where necessary civil servants' attendance that a meeting is scheduled to commence within the next 5 minutes, and then a 2-minute warning also. The bells will be utilized for house sittings and committee meetings, hopefully starting today. The speaker or the chairman will instruct the sergeant at arms to ring the bells, but in case, when I say speaker or chairman, means you today, if the house is in session, it will be the speaker, at which time all members are expected to be in their seats in the chamber within 2 minutes, so that either the person, the presiding officer, wherever, can commence the committee meetings. Bells are situated in the north corridor, on the back exterior of the building and the front exterior of the building, and they will certainly can be heard here. I was hoping to have a test as we sit, but I don't know if they were ready for that. But they tested it, and it's easy to very, you can hear it within the chamber if you're here. So, but certainly on the outside it is. So I just wanted to alert members to that, so that we can, if the presiding officer, wherever it is, house or committee, when they say 10 minutes or 15 or an hour, 5 minutes before the hour is up, and then 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Member for West Bay West.
I'm going to beg you for 30 minutes, sir.
Okay, we'll...
Should we just do it? We'll go into the small
Okay, I
committee
tell you
room and
what, we'll
discuss
just commence at 10 a.m.
Okay.
And give you sufficient
it. That would
time.
be good, sir.
No problem.
Thank you for your
very much.
indulgence. Thank you, sir.
Finance Committee is suspended until 10 a.m. this morning. Can all members start making their way back to the chamber, please? Thank you. Morning, members. Finance Committee is resumed. Please be seated. Morning, members, and once again, thank you for your understanding and cooperation thus far. The purpose of this meeting of the Finance Committee is to consider the items shown on the hard copy material that have been distributed to all members. The committee's approval for this supplementary expenditure is being sought under Section 12 of the Public Management and Finance Act, and the honorable members will recall such a procedure was done in July 2021 when this committee last met. I request members' usual cooperation in asking their questions promptly and not making any long introductory remarks or long preambles before stating their questions. Members, using the first item on the schedule before the committee as an example, when it comes to taking a vote on an item on the Finance Committee schedule, I shall ask members' position by posing a question. All those in favor of supplementary expenditure with respect to OE5 constituency allowance for an amount of $270,000 being approved pursuant to Section 12 of the PMFA, please say aye, and those against, no. With that started, in the interest of time and recognizing that we do have a lot of public servants out there who have already been waiting, we just start with the very first item on the schedule, which is OE5 constituency allowance in the amount of $270,000. Are there any questions? Okay. There being no any questions, I'll ask.
Mr. Chair, OE5 and OE130, we have no questions on, so you can go ahead and put those to the vote.
Okay, no problem. Thank you very much, Mr. Leader. All those in favor of OE5 constitutional allowance being increased in amount by $270,000 and OE130 administrative and advisory support to members of Parliament for the amount of $609,012, please say aye.
Aye.
All against? The ayes have it. Next item, colleagues, is on page 4, starting with the Ministry of Investment, Innovation and Social Development. And the amount is ITI 2, Social Development and Support, being increased by $140,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Mr. Leader.
Yes, sir. Mr. Chair, the reason here given is for recruitment of temporary staff to facilitate the disbursement of funds to those residents and businesses that were impacted by Tropical Storm Grace. Can you give us can we get an idea of how many staff and what exactly they will be doing?
Honorable Minister.
Thank you for the question. Through you, Mr. Chair, we anticipate there'd be 3 temporary staff, and they would be assisting in expanding the existing housing repair program team, which assesses from a 2 criteria basis: the financial assessment of the actual applicant, and then also a house assessment of an inspection of the repairs that are required. With the existing team, there was already pre-Grace, about 90 cases, with a staff complement of 2. With homes needing repairs on an expedited basis due to Grace, we thought it was prudent to expand the team temporarily to the end of the year to increase the ability to process applications and assess homes.
Honorable Leader.
Am I correct to say he said it would be 3 staff additional?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes.
And through you, sir, 140,000. We were here in September, 4 months literally left for the year. Is it intended to continue with the program beyond December 31st?
Through you, Mr. Chair, possibly.
And if I might ask for further supplements, are these people to be recruited, or they have already been recruited, or are identified?
One has already been recruited, and the other 2 are in the process of being recruited.
Mr. Chair.
Member for Bordentown East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the Minister, the Honorable Minister, of this additional staff that is taking on 3 additional staff, will they be doing the assessments, or a team will be hired to outside of these 5 staff to do the assessments?
Through you, Mr. Chair, they would be doing the assessments.
Any other questions? No other questions? All those in favor of ITI 2, Social Development Support, being increased by $140,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, no? The ayes have it. Moving on to TP 60, Housing Assistant, to be increased in the amount of $3 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through to you, to the Minister, and $3 million in terms of, looks like this is, well, certainly to help people with damages to homes as a result of Tropical Storm Grace. I guess I'm trying to understand, what the program actually will be, and and is it exclusive to Tropical Storm Grace damage?
Honorable Minister.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the program will be supplementary funding to the existing housing repair program. So there were individuals, as I mentioned in the prior question through you, Mr. Chair, who have been waiting for over 18 months for housing repair service. Unfortunately, Grace has accelerated their need for repairs, and they've gotten exponentially worse. But in addition to that, there were homeowners who cannot afford the repairs who weren't on the list that were damaged as a result of Tropical Storm Grace. So I think it's incumbent upon the government to assist as much as we can as a result of Tropical Storm Grace. Now, what I would say is that it is a bit of a difficult situation, because I think what we would have to try to achieve is to drive folks in, because we're still in the middle of hurricane season. So we'd have to be quite prudent with the repairs to ensure that we don't have a set of repairs and then another storm, God forbid, comes by and knocks over the repairs that we've already done. So we have to take a prudent and cautious approach to try to drive folks in. And as some of the repairs range from roofing, from electrical to flooring, all things that are urgent as we sit here as we speak.
Member for Borden East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to ask the Honorable Minister, I heard him almost allude to, will there be a cap as to how much would be attributed to each home?
Honorable Minister.
Through you, Mr. Chair, under the existing program, the cap is $25,000, but as it is a transfer payment, there are cases, and this has happened since this program has been in existence for many years, where the minister has the discretion to waive that $25,000 if it's an extremely urgent case, which I would anticipate in this case, because since the program didn't run in 2020 and for the first part of 2021, a lot of the cases have gotten more and more urgent.
Member for Borden East.
Mr. Chair, thank you so much. I just want to ask, I think the Honorable Opposition Leader started to go into this, but I don't think I've heard the answer in terms of process and procedure. I heard you talk about the amount of persons, some 90 that was on the list before that wasn't attended to, and some additional, it almost seems like there's been some additional requests or applications coming since the 90. And how do we, because in my district, which was one of the worst hit by Grace, how do I instruct or direct persons to benefit from this program that is so needed? I have a lot of names and a long list of people that are coming every day to try to get dried in.
Honorable Minister.
Through you, Mr. Chair, excellent question. So let me probably take a step back and describe how the program exists pre-Grace and what we intend to do to expedite things because of Grace. So pre-Grace, those who are homeowners who can't afford the repairs would apply to NAU, be assessed from a financial perspective, get onto the list, and then the housing repair team would go out and do the inspections, have the assessments, create a baseline estimate, and then the Housing Repair Committee board would take that baseline from the civil servant, put it out to bid to 3 contractors, and then the board would then decide which bid deserves the award. So in the case of now that we're in a crisis due to Grace, what the housing team has devised, which I plan to share after Finance Committee with all members, the government members have it, and I plan to provide it to you today, is we've created an MP office very simplified checklist. So your constituency office staff can put in the name, date of birth, pertinent details, the house, and you can kind of tick in very broad fashion whether it's a roof damage, whether it's plumbing. And then it has the email address of the housing repair team that you would submit it to get the persons on the list. Then the housing repair team, once the folks are on the list, would then go assess the homes.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, if you
Yes,
don't
sir.
mind me.
Member Bontonis.
But my last question on this, are you saying, because I heard what you said what happened pre-grace in terms of persons having to go to NAU and the 3 bids and so forth, because of the situation that we're in, and we are in the middle, and probably September is the worst month for hurricanes or tropical storms, are we still going to go that route in terms of the 3 bids on every one of these? Because I suspect that there will be a lot in each constituency. For us to go around and try to get 3 bids from each of the 19 constituencies might be a bit much, with the market already exhausted in terms of finding persons to do so.
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Through you, Mr. Chair, it is a good question, but at the same time, since we're managing public funds, we're going to have to still find the same measurement, some sort of mechanism for the committee to judge the bids by. Otherwise, you could end up in a situation where you've started something with a good and genuine purpose, but then can open it up to potential abuse. But the Housing Repair Committee is acutely aware of the situation and how fast they'll need to move and to widen the scope. Initially, pre-grace, the contractors that are usually the pool of contractors are small to medium contractors. But in this case, because of grace, we might have to expand the pool to address your question.
Member for Button. Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, sir, to the Minister. Will there be some sort of mean test for those who are seeking, assistance?
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
To you, Mr. Chair, yes, that already exists under the current program.
Honorable Leader.
Well, I know I've had several requests because I know I've got several constituents in that have had damage to roofs, particularly as a result of trees falling on them and stuff. And in fact, one lady contacted me because single mom, filed a claim on the insurance, but she can't meet the deductible. I mean, is that something government would consider in terms of its assistance to people? Otherwise, this lady is stuck unless money can be raised some other way to help her.
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, the Housing Repair Committee team and myself sat down and we anticipated that one. So on the form that you receive, there'll be a question that asks whether or not you have homeowner's insurance. Yes or no, and if you don't, the extent of the damage would then have to be brought to the committee to say whether or not this person can't afford a deductible and it wouldn't be worth it. In addition to that, we are in preliminary discussions with the R3 Foundation of whether we can expand the program, and a lot, if this appropriation supplementary is approved, a portion of the program to R3, and have their donors match it to increase the fund and increase the talent pool that might be able to assist with housing repairs.
Honorable Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Minister. One of the issues we faced in my constituency in the past is that quite often the property is not in the ownership is not in the name of the occupant. Could be children or grandchildren or sisters and brothers of the owner on the property, but not the person who's the occupant, and they've been denied assistance because of our policy in this matter. So it's just something for consideration on some of the most vulnerable. They are some of the most vulnerable that have been, in some instances, abandoned by their families. I note that you made mention of a portion of this funding going to R3. I understand, and I've been working with Ms. Tara Nielsen of ARC on the CASA program, which R3 also promised to match whatever she can raise. Have you been in discussions with the CASA program and ARC?
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Through you, Mr. Chair, on the first point on the criteria of home ownership, that's a long-standing issue that the Housing Repair Committee has grappled with. I used to grapple with it when I was the Deputy Chief Officer, and the good thing about the program being run under a transfer payment is that the minister has discretion. The also good thing about the program is the board is made up of members of the community. So in the situation that the honorable member described, if you're a part of, say, any of your constituencies, everyone in the neighborhood knows that that is Nana's house. She just happened to transfer it a few years ago to her daughter for various reasons, but she has no other place to go. It would be unconscionable not to proceed with the repairs because you know who lives in that home. That requirement of ownership is really there to prevent potential abuse or fraud. But once you've established a clear family link, and that's where the person's going to live, I think I've seen many times that discretion exercised by former ministers who used to run the program. In relation to the second question, I haven't gone as far as talking to ARC directly yet because I wanted to discuss it further with R3 as a board. I did have a conversation with the chair of R3, and he did mention the CASA program as a possibility, a way we could structure the arrangement. But I prefer to talk to the board first and have a wide range of options before I go directly to a particular program.
Member Bontonis.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, thank you. That was very helpful, Minister, because you got programs like ADRA, which is the Adventist group that go out and also repair homes for free. What I just wanted to nail down, because I'm still a little concerned about, I understand that process has to take place and about the bids. I'm trying to understand if the Housing Development Trust has any involvement in this housing, with the Housing Repair Committee, and if they would consider getting a pool of contractors, whether that's pool of 20 or whatever, that you could have on hand, that you could send out to these different places in different areas. I'm trying to figure out, I don't know if you've got all that kind of logistics or anything yet.
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Through you, Mr. Chair, the Housing Trust is separate because this program is geared towards actual homeowners who can't afford the homes as opposed to government-run housing. But that doesn't mean, to your point, to the member's point, that I haven't been in discussions with Minister Ebanks to my left about trying to expand the pool of contractors to get the work done faster.
Any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just matter of clarity, the elected member for Georgetown North was highlighting a problem that I do share as well in respect to my constituency of persons who were not the sole owner of the property, but have family connections. I know he made it by way of comment, but I would like to find out if he was in support of such a policy decision to assist persons who have living aboard on land that is not necessarily in their name, but have a family connection. Would that be an opposition support for kind of policy position?
Member Georgetown North.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I think the minister made it or satisfied my query in the sense that, yes, if there is a situation that calls for the minister to make his discretionary decision and the community or persons on the board have identified that this is in fact a real case, then absolutely.
Thank you all. Okay, I think we have definitely exhausted the TP 60,000 system.
Mr. Chair, could I
Sure, Honorable Minister for Social Development.
beg your indulgence for
Sure.
just one closing comment? I think this is a massive opportunity for the entire government and for this honorable House to assist and get our arms around what I believe is an urgent housing situation in this country. In relation to the member's question about getting other contractors involved, and also in relation to working with nonprofit organizations, I think we've all seen recent news about how urgent housing is, and Tropical Storm Grace, in my opinion, as I've mentioned earlier, has just exacerbated it. So I think this is a great opportunity for us to try to get our arms around the situation sooner rather than later.
Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Minister for Social Development. I will now go to the vote. All those in favor of TP 60 hours assistance be increased by $3 million, please say aye.
Aye.
All against, no. The ayes have it. TP, turn to page 5 on the schedule, honorable members. TP 80, support for business initiative, being increased by a amount of $4 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir, through you to the ministers. Can you get a description of what these business initiatives are?
Honorable Minister for Social Development.
Through you, Mr. Chair, this is an extension of the TP 96 that we're about to correct in the next item, that was born about and discussed in the prior Finance Committee meeting to assist those impacted by border closure who have tourism-related businesses. As members may recall, in the prior Finance Committee, this was a concept brought to caucus from land and sea tour operators who made a pretty compelling case that while prior stipends assisted them personally, they didn't have stipends to assist the business itself. So this was to assist with funding to maintain business assets and prepare them for readiness for reopening. At the time, there was some discussion of whether or not more funds should be allocated to the program, but we had taken a cautious approach because it was a new concept and innovation that hadn't been done previously. And so we took time within the ministry to develop a policy program, a framework around it that has been drafted in consultation with land and sea tour operators, which I'm pleased to report should be available for application hopefully by Monday coming, the 6th of September. But that then, as we were entering the consultations and was alluded to in the prior Finance Committee, there might be other subsectors who also need assistance with maintaining their assets before the borders reopen. So we thought perhaps it was prudent to extend another further $2 million to have another tranche.
Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, to the Minister. So I think I understand that there's a program for water sports or for the association that you're working with, but you're expanding it to include other sectors that may have been negatively impacted or continue to be negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. I just want to highlight as well that you have one person in particular, and I won't call their name because I haven't gotten permission, but you have others in the community who have not been able to access any assistance. One particular pioneer in tourism who owns a bed and breakfast, she's not been able to access any help, and that is her only income because she's neither an employer or the type of business that we've been able to provide assistance for in the past. So I just wanted to make sure that, if I understood you correctly, that there will be opportunities whether it's through the Small Business Development Center or otherwise, to assist those who have been not eligible for NAU and also not eligible for the stipend because they're not an employee. They were refused on both applications. So I just want to ensure that there will be opportunities for those in those situations to access assistance.
Honorable Minister.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'm very grateful for the member's question because that's exactly what's envisioned. We've identified, which I suspected that we would identify that there would be folks in exactly that situation. And as we were in consultation, we had a public meeting in West Bay maybe 2 weeks ago. And that sort of issue arose in the public meeting. And it didn't give us pause at the ministry staff that this would be necessary. And so with the support of caucus and cabinet, this additional funding is to try to fill that gap.
Honorable Member Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And will these be administered through the Center for Small Business Development?
Honorable Minister.
Through you, Mr. Chair, when we come on to the next item, yes, and that will explain the next item on the order paper.
Member for Bordentown East.
Mr. Chair, thank you very much. I just thought I should ask if this would extend towards sargassum cleanup on properties.
Honorable Minister.
I don't think we had that particular, through you, Mr. Chair, had that particular item in contemplation. That this is specifically for, through the Center of Small Businesses, for the exact situation that the member for Georgetown North described in relation to keeping the assets of the business afloat or ready for opening because certain persons are not employees. I don't think we had contemplated that.
Another question? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir, to the Minister. You mentioned some of this too is for Tropical Storm Grace relief. Had there been many businesses affected in negative way by Tropical Storm Grace, and maybe what segments of industry are suffering particularly?
Do you, Mr. Chair?
Honorable Minister. Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that was an amendment I spoke to the Financial Secretary earlier in the description. I haven't mentioned that in my remarks this morning, but I think you're referring to the description in the item. That, to my mind, should be deleted. This was not in connection to Tropical Storm Grace. I think that might be a drafting error that came across from the housing assistance. In relation to this is only what I described in terms of border closure. It doesn't have a connection to Tropical Storm Grace.
Just note, we the Ministry of Finance, after speaking to the Honorable Minister, did actually adjust the schedule to reflect the non-tropical grace. But I know you guys already had a previous schedule, but we did have an amended schedule if you want it, which does actually exclude. So I don't know if members want the revised, but I know members would have made notes on the copies that were previously given. But just in case we did make the drafting, we did make the amendments to it.
I would only suggest we could get it in the course of time. That's fine.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Any other questions with regard to TP80? Support for business initiative for $4 million? If not, I'll ask to take a vote. All those in favor of TP80, support for business initiative being increased by $4 million, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on to the next item on page 5, TP96, micro and small business grants being reduced by $2 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister. I take it then that with the reduction from what was approved back in July, that there are no further grants now being contemplated to just micro and small businesses. That program is now at an end.
Honorable Minister.
Do you, Mr. Chair? Thank you for the question. This goes to the prior item and the question that the member of Georgetown North raised. So in the prior Finance Committee, this amount was awarded to TP96, which is administered by the Department of Commerce. But we would want the program to be administered by the Center for Small Business Development, for business development. So we've reduced the TP96, but added it back to TP80. So it's all housed and administered under one government agency rather than two.
All right, any other questions? If not, I'll take the vote. All those in favor of TP 96, micro and small business grants being reduced by 2 million, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on to the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, and page 6, that's a long description, sorry, members. OE 140, COVID-19 response and recovery, being increased, for the amount of $28,477,315. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman, this is the one appropriation. I'd like for you to push it right back to the end of the Finance Committee, so that we need further time to
That's fine.
analyze this.
We'll skip that one, members, and I'm in agreement with that. With that said, we move to page 7 on the schedule for Ministry of District Administration and Lands. And first item is DL1, advice and support to the Minister for District Administration and Land in the amount of $246,584. Are there any questions? Seeing that there are no questions, I'll go to the vote. All those in favor of DL1, advice and support to the Minister of District Administration and Land in the amount of $246,584, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on to section DL2 on page 7 of the schedule, government services in Cayman, Bracken, Little Cayman in the amount of $500,000. Are there any questions? Honorable Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, we just want to confirm this. I know in Cayman Brac, we moved away from it in Grand Cayman, but government still house persons, and these are some of the homes that we've traditionally used and are now in need of repair. I remember discussions about one particular home as well, but I just want to confirm that is in fact what it is.
Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, there are a number of homes on Cayman Brac that are owned by the Crown, and they have a myriad of utilization. Some of them have been used for the Cuban immigrants that come in to house them until they're able to be transferred to Grand Cayman. Some are used for visiting public and civil servants from Grand Cayman, like, for example, agriculture. Sometime other departments that may need to stay longer than what we would desire for them to be in a hotel because of the cost prohibiting factors. Some of them are used if there are domestic issues, because we don't have like a women's housing facility that we have in Grand Cayman. And unfortunately, what has happened for the past several years, maintenance was not done a lot of times because of not having sufficient either manpower or monies to do it. So this is an incremental approach, Mr. Chair and honorable members, to try to bring them up to speed. We're anticipating, based on what we saw happening in Cuba with the street protests, that there would be an uptake of the desire for them to come back through Cayman Islands on the way to the States or wherever their final destination is. And I can say, having visited the 8 or 9 properties, that they are in a deplorable state. And we would be in trouble with the Human Rights Commission for putting persons in such facilities. So this would assist perhaps with the first 2 or 3, some cosmetic, some much more substantial.
Any other questions? All those in favor of DAL2, government services in Cayman, Bracken, Little Cayman, being increased by $500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Next item, honorable members, is on page 8, TP 101, Sister Islands Community Programs, $25,000. Are there any questions?
You can take the vote, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. All those in favor of TP 101, Sister Islands Community Programs, $25,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on to EA4 on page 8, land purchase, being increased by $2 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the Minister, ask if there is a list of properties that have been identified for purchase with this $2 million.
Thank
Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, this is a continuation of the policy to acquire the very important beach property and access. So there's not a completed list yet, but in order to be able to fulfill that commitment and to continue in looking basically what the ministry does, if members and our departments bring it to our attention that there's a particular piece of beach property that you'd like to buy in your constituency, then we go and get the 3 evaluations and take it through the process on up to the cabinet and purchase it. There are some in mind, but because we haven't closed the negotiation, if the member don't mind, we could speak to them off air so that it wouldn't affect commercial sensitivity of those that we're trying to get when the price would change. But certainly there is some room should this be passed there today by honorable members. If members haven't yet submitted, I know some of you have, to submit it to Mr. Wilbur. My acting chief officer sits behind me so that we can commence the process of getting evaluations and see whether the proprietors wish to dispose of the property for the interest of the public good.
Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I just want to take this opportunity to ask, I'm not sure who would be responsible, but to ask if there has been any updates or any further developments on the fish market.
Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As far as involvement of the land minister is concerned, there are no further movement since the last government was in control of it. We're told that they were supposed to file their claim for adverse possession, and the minister still awaits that filing.
Honorable Member for Georgetown North.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I thank the Minister for the response. I do know that there were plans afoot when we demitted office for the construction of an alternate site on the Cove. Have we made any progress on that? I think it was through the Georgetown Revitalization Program.
Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands.
Mr. Chair, that one is above my pay scale. I'm not involved in that aspect of the project, so I'm not sure whether another minister is, but it's not under the land ministry.
Honorable Minister for Tourism.
Through you, Mr. Chair, in respect to the statement made by the elected member for Georgetown North, as the representative for Georgetown Central, upon which the Red Spot Fishers Market falls within, I've had numerous conversations with the persons who use the location for decades now, and they're not mindful or have the appetite for moving. As the elected member for Georgetown North well knows, what was proposed is not something that the users of the location is in support of. He's also aware of many discussions, because he was the minister at the time, with the landowner. I am willing on behalf, from a tourism perspective, and the representative for Georgetown Central, to sit down with the landowner to find a resolve that is amenable to all parties, including the whole country. The location is a historical site in many persons' eyes, and I don't think there wants to be any changes in that respect. So if the elected member from Georgetown North would love to assist in that process, then I'd be welcome to it, to sit down with the landowner, that we can find a solution for all the good people of this country.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take the vote. All those in favor of EA4 land purchase being increased by $2 million, please say aye. Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on, members, to EA55 Cayman Brack and Little Cayman Roads being increased by $500,000. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair, might I invite the chair to make an amendment to the description, which appears to be a scrivener's error? It should read to fund the construction and repair of roads on Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. And under the reasons, it should read to extend the road network.
I am fine with that change. Members have any objections to that change as outlined by the Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands?
And I can add, Mr. Chair, if your kind indulgence, that the reason for this request is that the funds are practically depleted around the election period. So in order to keep the new responsibility in the men employed until December, we need to get this extra money to be able to do that, and because there's road work still to be done.
Honorable Leader of Opposition.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister, we talk here in the reason for give access to landlocked parcels. Are these government properties that we're seeking to get access to, or is this for private properties?
Honorable Minister for District Administration and Lands.
Thank you to the Honorable Leader, Mr. Chair. That's why in the beginning I invited the committee to make the amendment. It obviously is a scrivener's error. Not quite sure the genesis of it, but basically the description should say to construct roads in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman, and the reason is to extend the road work, and those are public road works and for public uses. For example, one of them is to continue, and we don't have money every year, so each year we're putting a certain amount of money. The Major Donner Road, which goes up to the lighthouse, so we'll do like a mile 1 year or a half mile 1 year, and so that's like one of them that we're going to be doing. The same thing in Little Cayman on the north side. And the south side, we do like a half mile or a mile. So these funds are to keep the road crew employed on these public roads.
So the reference to land series, or just to confirm that the reference to landlocked parcels should come out.
Deleted.
Okay.
That's correct, sir.
Okay.
Thank you very much. And the questions with regards to EA 55 Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Roads, 500,000. If not, I'll take the vote. All those in favor of EA 55 Cayman Brac and Little Cayman Roads being an increase of 500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Honorable colleagues, move to EA 95 Cemetery Vaults, Cayman Brac, being increased by $25,000. Are there any questions?
Can put it to the vote, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Leader of Opposition. All those in favor of EA 95 Cemetery Vaults, Cayman Brac, being increased by $25,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. That concludes the section for the Ministry of District Administration of Lands. I'll now turn to the Ministry of Education. Starting on page 10, EGA 1, Policy Advice, Governance and Ministerial Support Services, for the amount being increased by $200,200. Are there any questions? Honorable Member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Minister, for the reason for this appropriation increase in funding to facilitate the use of cloth masks in schools to help prevent the spread of COVID-19, is this sort of suggesting that our students may have to wear masks once the borders open in October, whether it's mandatory that they wear masks to school?
Honorable Minister for Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, that decision has not been made. This has been something that has been ongoing from even before the elections, but we're now just coming for the funding because we didn't have it at that time. And basically, students are still required to wear it on the school buses. Obviously, once we open up, as the Honorable Premier indicated in the most recent press conference, Mr. Chair, that the science will be looked at the condition of where we are worldwide as well as locally with COVID will have to be considered, and then a decision will be taken at that time. This is basically the ministry preempting and being ready in the event any such decision had to be made. But in the meanwhile, it's a continuation of them wearing it on the school bus to the various government schools.
Any other questions?
I guess just for my own edification too, sir, I think you said that the students are present, and of course they're traveling on the bus, must be masked. Has government provided those masks to students up to this point?
Thanks to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition, through Mr. Chair. It's a hybrid situation now. Some parents do send their children, their students with it, but we also have masks available on the bus that the bus wardens can dispense with, and there's some at the school as well, because we had ordered some before.
Okay.
Some of them, though, are disposable, I might add, so we're trying to move on to the cloth mask now.
Okay. Any more questions, Honourable Leader of the Opposition? Thank you very much. All those, I'll now put it to the vote. All those in favor of EGA 1, Policy Advice, Governance, and Ministerial Support Services being increased by $200,000 and $200, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Next item, Honourable Members, NGS 91, Public School Meals Program, in the amount of $3,100,996. Are there any questions? Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the Minister, clearly this is the new program that we understood would be coming forward and funding sought for, but can the Minister describe to us how these meals are to be provided within school? What will be the policy? Who will be providing the meals? Will they be contracted out, or whether the Ministry will be hiring staff to cook meals at the schools? Just further clarity on what this program is about, how it will be run.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Chair, the government thought it prudent at this particular juncture to move forward with this new program of providing free meals to our students. It's anticipated purely based on financial restraints under constraints that for the initial program that we would be providing breakfast, snack, and lunch to all of our public school students. In addition, there's a nutritionist that will overview the meals to ensure that our children are getting healthy meals, because a healthy nation saves a lot of money with overseas tertiary medical expenses and even local expenses in years to come. We also had to include, Mr. Chair, the Lighthouse School, the secondary element of it, because it's a K through 12, and it was going to be difficult to differentiate between the primary school students and tell the high school ones at Lighthouse that they couldn't get. So that is the exception where currently the only high school students would be at the Lighthouse School. It is the intention of the government funds being provided, and obviously if I had the funds I'd do it now, but I don't. We're in the middle of COVID and we're trying to be as prudent as we can. It is anticipated that come January, with the successful passing of the next 2-year budget, that the secondary public schools will come online for the free meals as well. Our testing and our research have shown that there are a number of things, and time doesn't permit to go in all of it, but there is social, psychological, physical, and behavioral issues when we find that a number of our children are coming without the meals and proper meals. So that's some of the reason, justification behind it. Some schools have homeschool associations or parent-teachers association that cater and provide the meal through the leasing of the properties on site. As far as I'm aware, that will continue. There will also be some that are contracted. For example, in Cayman, none of our schools have canteens, unlike the case in Grand Cayman. And because we're looking, hopefully sooner than later, to build a new high school on the bracket, it makes sense to go and find monies now to put in canteens there. So obviously, they will have to be contracted out. And we believe, and I'm sure you would concur, sir, that this is a step in the right direction. There will be another incremental element with it, because in doing this research, Mr. Chair, I came across one-time plastic use containers as opposed to having all these disposables, even though I'm very grateful to my colleague, the minister responsible for DEH and the director there, who have now put in place management for the extra collection that would emanate from the provision of these free meals by a greater cross-sector of the student population. So for the upcoming budget, I would like to have included, at the risk of anticipating what's going to mean there, these containers, which will not only be one-time plastic use, but it will also have the portions that are recommended to keep our children healthy, so that as they go along, hopefully they would be getting the right proportion of their protein, the carbohydrates, and the sugars that's there, so that we won't end up with the obesity that many of us Caribbean people suffer from, because we have some good food in these islands.
Through you, sir, to the
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
So this 3.1 million is just really designed to cover our primary school children from now through to the end of the year.
That is correct, sir. And
Okay.
Lighthouse School.
And the Lighthouse School, yeah. And if I could, sir.
Yes, sir.
When is the program slated then to begin? Is this going to start immediately? Where
It started on Tuesday.
Okay. Is there any estimate then as to what this is likely to cost annually? Because I recognize this is only a portion of our staff, of our students.
Honorable Minister of Education.
If I could beg indulgence to refer to the cabinet paper which contained that information. Mr. Chair, the estimated cost to provide for this upcoming semester, which was for primary, 2.9, round off to 3. Secondary schools, if we did it, would have been 3 million. And Lighthouse School was 140,580. So we took the decision that we weren't in a position to do all of them, so you would not see a request then for the 3 million, just over 3 million for the secondary school in this particular finance committee. So from January next year until December, the primary school would be 7.7 million, secondary 7.9, Lighthouse School 366,300, being an estimated total of just over 16 million. And I guess, Mr. Chair, so that I can put that in some perspective, as I heard someone say on the radio a few days ago, it's difficult to justify to a developing and well-developed community that we can provide 3 rounded meals to our inmates at Northward, but we have difficulty providing meals to our school children.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
And I don't, thank you very much, sir, to the minister. How many actual students then is this designed to cover? What's the total complement within our school system these days?
Honorable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that there is approximately 5,200 students enter our system, and that would be 3 meals a day, which includes a snack. I can say that so far, and obviously it's the first 2 weeks, so you expect there'll be some kinks and some iron out that would have to go through. Some children are still bringing from home, and so as we go through this semester, we'll see how that uptake is. I mean, obviously, there are those who will say that some can afford and it should be the means test, and I think that we saw the disaster that happened with that when children were assisted with NAU. Some payments were late, and so the children had to go and wait until everybody else got served, and you were kind of cultivating, and the social engineering would probably got a D if we had to mark it. And I think that if we're going to move, and we are moving towards world-class education, which I'm happy that all members on both sides of the House apparently support, if we can attack the educational journey from a holistic perspective, then on the balance of probability for the success increases. And so at the end of the day, when we get our next independent OES inspections, we would hope that it would have been narrowed down, that the fingers cannot no longer be pointed to us as a government saying that, the resources weren't there, whether it was HR or otherwise, that the fingers can actually point to where it should be pointing a long time ago, and that's to the parents, who has that awesome responsibility of mentoring and leading and nurturing their children. Obviously, government fills those gaps, and this is one of the gap fillers that we're doing. We found that during COVID, as we had the opportunity and privilege to go to visit more homes and get more personal contact with our parents, there is a colossal need out there within our society, and it isn't as rosy as when we drive around in the front streets, and the affluence has not yet penetrated through the various stratification of our society. And I believe it would be a gross mistake for us not to take care and put that investment. Yes, it is a lot, but Cayman has done very well, even in COVID. Thank God for those who stayed and engineered and were fiscally prudent, and sure, we had money for the rainy day that we now are traversing.
Honorable Member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question to the minister. In terms of how this is, the children, the students order their food, do they pre-order their food, or do they just order each day? Because, if you have 2 choices per day, do you actually prepare? I mean, will there be waste as a result of one school, let's say Red Bay having 420 students, and they have 2 choices, and if they don't pre-order, do you actually prepare meals for 2 meals then for 420 students, even though they'll only be partaking of the one meal per day? Just trying to get clarity on that in terms of the waste factor involved.
Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to invite the newly appointed Director of Educational Services, who deals with the operational aspect, and have been tasked. We set the wider big policy, and they've been tasked to implement it. And I would ask for a bit of charitable equity on his behalf, because it's just started Tuesdays to go yet. But I'm sure he, like us, have come from the background where you waste not, want not principle. So,
Thank you very much. Before responding, can you state your name and title for the record before answering the honorable member from Georgetown South question? Thank you.
Yes, sir. Good morning. Mark Ray, Director, Department of Education Services. Through you, Mr. Chair, we are working to have the pre-order system in place. We're actually working to incorporate it within our student information system so that we can track the impact all the way through to the ultimate student outcomes. So our student information system will help us with that. For the first 2 weeks, we are operating on a manual tracking basis because we had limited time to get everything sorted, but we are working very closely with our schools, working very closely with our canteen services. Some of the schools have already started with the pre-ordering service, and we're working with others to get that up and running as quickly as possible because we do recognize the potential for wastage. But we anticipate within the next 2 weeks, we'll be in a position where we have everyone doing the pre-orders.
Honorable Member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, sir. Through you, Mr. Chairman, just one quick question in terms of allergies. Is that also taken into consideration, I suspect, by the nutritionist or whatever, in terms of kids having allergies?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, ma'am. We are looking at allergies. We're also looking at, as Minister mentioned, the nutrition content. We have a food standards document that all vendors have to comply with, and we have regular inspections and walkthroughs with the nutritionist, as well as actual information sessions for parents, information sessions for the canteen providers in terms of the type of food that should be served and the nutritional value, the aesthetic look, and obviously the taste of the meals, so that we can make sure our children are engaged visually and they have good meals to eat.
Honourable Member George
Thank you.
South.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. And the Minister for Tourism can attest to this, and maybe the member for Georgetown West as well. Early in our term last time around, the minister and I think the MP White, we visited John Gray, and we actually went and did a testing of their cafeteria, and their salad bar was the best ever. I could have eaten the salad there every day. So I don't know if that still continues, but I have to give them kudos that that was excellent, and that was, to me, was very healthy. That's not a question, that's just a statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the honourable member, and thanks for her positive observation to say the proof is in the pudding. So that will go down a record that, you know, John Gray is a very good school, they got a good report. But I can say that we can only expect for that to vastly improve if they come in line of the new John Gray High School, although it has not fully opened, it's been partially open, and members who have visited it, which quite a few members in here have visited, will see that it's a world-class canteen that's in there. It's comparable to any high school anywhere in the world. So we're very excited that that was one of the transitional projects between the governments that is continuing for the best interest of our students.
Honourable Member Button Down East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to publicly applaud the Honourable Minister for this school meal initiative. And many of us in here, all 19 constituencies or elected members have been called to schools to assist in the past, and I think this is admirable, and it can only help with the growth of this nation. Thank you.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Just like to graciously receive the positive remarks from the other side.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take the vote. All those in favor of NGS 91 Public Schools Meal Program, $3,100,996, please say aye.
Aye.
All those against, no. The ayes have it. Continuing on page 11, honourable members, TP 30, local and overseas scholarships and bursaries being increased by $8,071,226. Are there any questions? Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. It reflects almost a doubling of the appropriation for scholarships and bursaries. Trying to understand how much of this maybe relates to the increase in the amount of scholarships that I think has been implemented, and how numbers of new scholarship or increases in numbers of scholarship applications.
Honourable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. I should say up front that about 56% of this is for prepayment for the spring term, of next year, and this happens so that you have a smooth transition with the students. Obviously, our budget wouldn't be approved till late into the year, and children go back, depending on if it's America, Canada, or UK, at varying times, but a lot of them in the first week of January. So in order to negate those possibilities that they lose classes or they lose preference to the best professors in the school, the policy was taken from some years ago that we prepay for the spring of the next term. Another part of this almost appearance of Dublin is that when we were doing budgeting the last time, I believe I'm correct in saying that we got 10 million? 10 million, and we had requested 15. And we had requested 15 million. So basically 50% of the almost 100% is to top up what was actually needed to be budgeted. So in reality, we're just looking for a top up of the 50%. And that's so that members would be able to disseminate the information to the various constituencies. There were a number of categories. Obviously, there is one for the Cayman Scholar, which this top boy and girl can receive a maximum of $100,000 per annum. That's built into it. Secondly, there was an increase from $20,000 for the basic education scholarship to $25,000 per annum. And because we're trying to encourage more Caymanians to get into education, if they take up that discipline, they can get $35,000. Then we also have the postgraduate students who are pursuing their master's and their PhD. They were originally receiving $25,000, Mr. Chair. That will now be increased, subject to this getting full approval, from $25,000 to $35,000 per year. And then we also had the situation with the A-level programs. For many years now, our government schools have not been providing A-levels, so our students have to go to either Catholic school or prep school. Those prices have gone up, increased this year. I believe prep school is like 14,000 plus, and Catholic school is in the region of 13,000 plus. And we were only doing the first year. This will now allow our students, which I never quite fully understood the logic, but this will now allow our students, if it receives safe passage, the ability to get a full scholarship to complete their A-levels at either prep school or at Catholic school. The utopia and our ultimate goal, Mr. Chair, is for our public schools to revisit the possibility of providing the A-levels back in the school. Obviously, it would have to be a comprehensive study because there will be a cost element. But I'm even more impressed to expedite that for the sole reason that we've experienced during the advent of COVID, that the prep school and the Catholic school, and rightly so, because charity starts at home, fill their quotas with their own children first. So we found ourselves in an inverse position where our public school students had capacity difficulties in getting a space at the Catholic and prep school, which isn't what we want to see happening. And hopefully, as COVID improves, we hope, God's willing, that we won't see that problem occurring. But I've tasked the Education Council, once again through a ministerial directive as provided for in Education Law 2016, that they're to look at that possibility of what it's going to cost, the pros and cons, whether it's cheaper to continue funding and maybe find a way to sit down with prep and Catholic, see how they can increase their capacity or whatever is the best solution, so that members would be on alert as where we're going with the A-level program.
Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you. Through you, sir, to the Minister, thank you for the explanation. And I don't remember if you said it, but with regard to the A-level programs, when students leave public school, go into the private schools for A-levels, is it the default position that government pays for that, or is there some, is it done by application that needs assessment? What's the process?
Honourable Minister of Education.
Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that students apply and they must be taking a minimum of 3 A-level subjects.
Honourable Member for Red Bay.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, I simply wish to thank the Minister for Education, for continuing to make it easier or more affordable for our students to be able to go to university. And I'm particularly grateful that she moved expeditiously on the increase in the allowance, particularly for graduate students. For I know that amount of 25,000 was not adequate. And I did have a number of conversations with her about it, and I'm delighted that she was able to, with approval of the cabinet, to get that done in time for this school year. Also, I am still a very strong advocate for the government schools to resume the A-level program, which was scrapped back, I believe, I think the term before I became education minister, which would have been somewhere around 2000. I always thought that was a terrible idea. I understood what the thinking was at the time, which was that by not having the A-level program, we would encourage, or not we, but the system would encourage more students to go to UCCI, because the objective then was to build the population there. But I think it's been one of the really bad decisions that was taken, and we now have, for many years, capacity issues with the private schools being able to take on board the students from the government school system. But aside from that, I think I just think we're missing a really good opportunity to keep our students who have gone through the government school system and done well up to GCSE from being able to attain good A-level results at a government school. And because we have this stigma which still continues, that the private schools are better than the government schools. And I think we need, one of the ways to improve that impression, or to change that impression, is for us to get the A-level program back in the government schools and see students in those schools continuing to perform well at advanced level exams. So thank you, Minister.
And the Minister for Education.
Only to say, Mr. Chair, that the government fully concurs with the Honorable Member from Red Bay that A-level should be reintroduced in the school, and once the new council has an opportunity to look at the findings of the previous council and make any variations that they deem fit to that policy, we would seek to see what the costing is and what the pros and cons, and bring it through caucus cabinet and then back down to finance committee. Because I fully concur that if we are indeed to continue the journey in pursuit of world-class education, that is a missing component at present, which needs to be filled as a matter of urgency.
Are there any other questions for TP30 local and overseas scholarships and bursaries? If not, I'll put it to the vote. All those in favor of TP30 local and overseas scholarship and bursaries being increased by $8,071,226, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against say no. The ayes have it. Continuing on page 11, TP51 other educational and training assistance. TP51 other educational and training assistance being increased by $111,623. Are there any questions? Seeing that there are no questions, I'll take it to the vote. All those in favor of TP51 other educational and training assistance being increased by $111,623, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Continue on page 11, TP93 private and public school grants being increased by $1 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Through you to the minister, could we have an explanation as to who will receive these grants and what the criteria will be for them to receive it?
Honorable Minister of Education.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks to the Honorable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, the recipients of this grant, should it see safe passage, would be all registered private schools and not as opposed to private schools registered with the Private School Association. I'll call upon my able chief officer to explain the criteria for it, but it was a grant that was in place before, and over the years it went from $2 million to $1 million, and then it went down to much less. Have been a number of representation from the private schools that they're experiencing a level of financial difficulty, and also coupled together with the fact of the performance by some of them receiving weak grading from the OES, we thought that it was best to lend a helping hand to them to try to bring them up to speed, and hence the reason you see it reappearing as a grant to our private schools to allow them. The second issue, the third issue, Mr. Chair, is that since the public schools have seen progressive, positive trajectory in the performance of the school, albeit with the behavior and the grades, that this year registration we've seen a transition from the private schools into our public schools, which is a good, perhaps unintended consequence, but it also put that added capacity strain on our system. And so with the assistance through this to our private schools, it will enable them to better keep their doors open, especially some of those smaller schools that are struggling, and give us that added capacity until the ministry, albeit on a wider perspective, the government has an opportunity to see what the needs are. For example, in the Eastern District, which we all know is one of the fastest growing districts, as well as in the Georgetown West Bay Peninsula, whether there is need at this time for another private primary school, because we do have some primary schools that are at the 500 range capacity, and from an educational perspective, that is not a mark that we want to go beyond, because it reduces, it has diminishing returns once we pass that 500 number and we have to go 3 and 4 streams within our school. We believe that we're okay with the capacity for most of our high school. I know that John Gray and Clifton Hunter had some minor capacity issues like with grades 7 and 8, but the ministry and DS have worked with that to try to iron those up. There's some capacity issues with the nursery and daycare at Cayman, and we've been working long nights and weekends to try to see how we can remedy that. But I think this is not an end-all fix, but it is an enabler fix, if I can make that distinction, to ensure that there's a smooth transition without interruption of both private and public schools, which lends into the whole concept of not leaving any child behind. So I'll ask the learned Chief Officer to respond thereto.
Good morning, Chief Officer. Before responding, just state your name and title for the record. Thank you.
Good morning, Satanya Cacho, Chief Officer, Ministry of Education. Mr. Chair, through you. The grant will be used in a number of ways. Minister alluded to some of those. Currently, we have 3 good performing schools as rated by the Office of Education Standards in the public school system, which are Lehman Scott High School, John Gray High School, and the Lighthouse School, and we're working towards getting those schools that are satisfactory to good. There are also 5 weak private schools that need quite a bit of assistance to raise standards, because 50% of their population are Caymanian children. And so we were having some of those funds go towards school improvement, exercises, remedies, professional development, resources, etc. We're also increasing the expectation from private schools, from the ministry, in terms of the data that we collect from them and services provided. This is especially the case around students with special educational needs and disabilities. So understanding from private schools how many students they accept with special education needs and disabilities and the accommodations they provide or should be providing. As you know, our government schools accept all students, any student, regardless of any additional need that they have. And this is quite an expensive thing for us to do, but we want to make sure that our students who are in private schools are also receiving those services. We also have a number of private schools that are rated good through the Office of Education Standards who have enrollment practices that focus on academic attainment. And we strongly believe that those schools who have those enrollment criteria should be rated excellent. So if you're only accepting students who are performing at an academically high level, your school should be rated as excellent, rather than good. So those are some of the focus areas.
Honorable Member for Red Bay.
Mr. Chairman, just a question. It says in the description that it is private and public school grants. I was wondering what grants are being made available to the public schools, or is that just a mistake?
No, Mr. Chair. But thanks for raising it because it gives us the opportunity to actually mention that. That is actually the TP. So inclusive in that TP is this new $1 million, but there is also $250,000 that it's made available for the public schools for specific projects. So basically the public school, if they wanted to do a particular STEM project, they could access that grant from the ministry, the $250,000, sir.
Honorable Member for Button East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just thought I should ask the Honorable Minister. I know in the past it used to happen, but I don't know if it still continues in terms, because the funding went down, so now it's getting back to an increased level. I want to know if there's an appetite or if is it mandated that scholarships are provided to public school students to the private schools. I don't know.
Chief Officer.
Yes, in two ways. So, for example, we have the dual entry program where students finish their exams early at the end of year 11, and they can have access then if they have grades from A to C, 1 to 3, including math and English, they can access their post-secondary education a year earlier than their peers. And so they receive scholarships to attend UCCI, the A-level program that our minister spoke about earlier, International Baccalaureate program, CAPE programs, other programs like that. And then we also have funding for students with special educational needs or additional needs whose needs cannot be met in the government school program. Those students receive services, and then we have a panel in place which includes educational psychologists, depending on the need. Sometimes it's representatives from the HSA, DCFS, etc., and they determine where a placement would be for that child outside of government school, where his or her needs can be met, and then the government pays for that as well.
Any other questions? If not, I'll take the vote on TP 93, private and public school grants being increased by $1 million. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those against, no. The ayes have it.
Mr. Chair, before you move on, permit me to thank the minister's staff from both DAL and Education, and I also want to in particular thank my permanent parliamentary secretary, Ms. Kathy, for her work, but especially as related to the private school grants and the interest that she displayed there too.
Thank you very much, Minister. Honorable colleagues, moving on to page 12 of the schedule, and we'll now start with outputs for the Ministry of Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure. And we take the first item, PAH 4, public parks and cemeteries maintenance and management being increased by $500,000. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, the description here says that this is to assist with the NICE program. Can you get an indication from the ministers to when they are planning to start this program?
Honorable Minister for Planning, Agriculture, Housing and Infrastructure.
Mr. Chair, through you, the NICE program is looking to start in the first part of the winter season.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? All right, seeing the Honorable Member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can the Honorable Minister state what you said is starting in the winter season? Can you give some specific date?
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Mr. Chair, through you, it would be in the December season, like it has been throughout the rest of the years.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir. And I thought maybe this might have been some funding to continue to help with the cleanup efforts, or just with following tropical storms that we've had. Just curious to know if the resources that we have working, particularly with Public Works and other government entities, is going to be able to handle the remaining work to be done.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Mr. Chair, that to answer the minister's opposition leader's answer, we will be actually looking for that funding to carry on into the next PH 25, which will be the next one coming up.
Honorable Member for Bordentown East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask the Honorable Minister, in regards to the new cemetery in Bordentown, I guess Peace Bay area, I see the description here is to maintain and manage cemeteries, and just had an embarrassing situation on Saturday, and I wanted to know what is the frequency in terms of the maintenance of these cemeteries, and can the minister say if and some of these funds will be to improve the surface in some of these cemeteries. Some of them are quite rocky, and there is some flooding actually, where persons had to actually be careful it didn't fall in the water. So if the minister can say if there any of this funding will be to try to improve the surface there in this new cemetery, in particular in Bordentown, but it also seems like it needed some fill in for persons to be able to attend funerals, burials, at this new cemetery that really needs a look at.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Mr. Chair, through you, this funding was directly more or less for the NICE program, but to give my colleague from Bordentown East ease of mind, I will actually look into that to see how we can help him out and assist with there.
Honorable Member for Georgetown South.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Also to the Honorable Minister, the cemetery in Prospect, also there's an issue there with the root structure. And now I haven't been there subsequent to this tropical storm, but I know there's a lot of root structure there in Prospect Cemetery. And when you attend funerals and stuff, it's really, it needs to be addressed, or it needs to be, we need to have some sort of fill or something at that cemetery as well.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've just taken notes of it, and I'll have my colleagues go and take a look at it today, see what we can do.
Thank you much. Any other questions? Seeing there be no other questions, I'll ask all those in favor of PAH4, Public Parks and Cemeteries Maintenance and Management, being increased by 500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Continue on page 12, honorable members, PAH 25, Post-Disaster Recovery Works, $500,000. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Yes, sir. Just to the minister, sir. The alleviate and mitigation of flooding, what areas are you specifically seeking to do this work in at this time?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the NRA has identified several areas throughout the whole island that actually needs drains. We have looked at them almost a number of 80 new drains needed to be put in throughout the whole island.
Honorable Leader for the Opposition. Honorable Member for Red Bay.
Mr. Chair, my only question would be, is that enough money? And also bearing in mind that this is just the end of August, and we still have September, October, November to navigate with potential bad weather. I won't even call on the other names like storm or anything like that. Bad weather. Is 500,000 enough realistically? Would be my only question.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Mr. Chair, through you, these numbers were based off of the last storm that we had, but as the member did allude to, we don't know what is actually coming down the pipeline. So there's always somehow to increase that funding if we need to further, or we can do it here as we feel so right now.
Honorable Member for Borden Town East.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the minister's response in terms of the 80 additional drains, and I know that there was a problem in terms of the depth of the drains, so I don't know if they're going just straight to the 100 or the new depth. I think it was 80 before or something. But I wanted to get some kind of indication if one of the worst flooding places that have been known to Public Works and NRA is Cumber Avenue and the Belford area, which is almost like a fish bowl in those areas. Are these two areas, and not that these are the only areas in Borden Town that have flooding, because we have other areas, but these are the two worst, in my opinion, and from some persons at NRA. Are these two named places, Cumber Avenue and Belford, recipients of some of these new drains, and are there any other stormwater management assessment being done for these areas?
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Mr. Chair, through you, I have to applaud the NRA team and board members there. They have actually taken a drive out throughout the whole island and to let the the member for Borden Town East know that Cumber was actually in that drive when they went out there to locate the areas that should be having drains in there, and Belford also.
Honorable Member for Borden Town East.
Mr. Chair, I just want to publicly thank the minister for that undertaking in terms of these persons have suffered for many, many years. I drove through there right after the tropical storm, what I call a hurricane. And it was quite embarrassing for me to see, as a country, that we allow these persons to have suffered so long, and not just under this government, previous governments have tried to solve this problem. We haven't been able to come up with resolve, especially in Cumber Avenue. And they've tried. NRA has really tried some band-aid approaches, which has helped for a couple of years, and then it starts up again. But I really appreciate the efforts that you've taken and commitment to try to assist these residents in Cumber Avenue and Belford with their flooding problems. Thank you.
Any other questions? Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to thank the Honorable Minister and his new chairman of NRA, who have been doing a fantabulous job recently. I've had the experience of going around with him in my constituency, Mr. Alric Lindsay, and I see that there's a drastic change in respect to the approach to dealing with roads and flooding. So I just want to thank the Honorable Minister and his new chairman for the great work they've been doing.
Mr. Chairman,
Honorable Member for West Bay West.
I want to put on record my appreciation for the amount of work has been done over the cleanup and before for the oncoming storm and for the cleanup afterwards. I had NRA cause to have NRA come out on Sunday, and they were really willing and able, came out and tried to alleviate some flooding, which is a more long-term flood, because I repeat again, the more people build walls around their yards, they get flooded out, and those walls, the water goes somewhere. Sometimes it remains there, but sometimes it goes into other people's property and flood them out. So that is happening, and something probably planning going to have to look at for a long term. But I certainly want to add my appreciation, and just a question as if where we're at now with the cleanup, these funds will, for those places that are not completed cleanup, these funds will go to assist completing in those areas.
Honorable Minister for Planning.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I just been reliably informed that I think that maybe we should look at maybe increasing that 500,000 to an additional 200,000 to carry us through for the rest of the year.
I appreciate Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the increase, because I know the work is there. But my question is if we're going to be able to continue to clean up for those areas that have not completed. And I should add that while we are still cleaning, because the huge amount of trees that have been damaged in the yards and the areas, whether you're going to get some funding from this to complete that work. That's what I'm trying to determine.
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the Honorable Speaker of the House, that is actually correct, sir. This funding is actually for NRA to help assist and get more people out there to actually pick up that debris that's left alongside the roads. Me, myself, actually took a drove down in West Bay, and I realized that there are areas in West Bay that still desperately need cleaning up, and that is why we're asking for these additional fundings to help throughout there, but not only there, but also in the Prospect and the Red Bay area also, and Savannah.
I appreciate that, Mr. Chairman. What I'm trying to determine, we have a crew. Are we going to, and I know that there is something to do with the NICE program. Where are we when we end the funding this week? Like ours will end on Thursday.
Mr. Chair, through you, when his funding is finished in the West Bay area, then the NRA will actually take over from there to finish the bulk waste cleanup that is actually left in that location.
Honorable Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you give us a moment to converse with the minister, please?
I didn't work with, sorry.
Mr. Chair, through you, do you mind if we put off the vote for the post-disaster recovery works until after lunch, sir? That we can speak with all the rest of the colleagues.
No, we'll take the vote now.
Okay.
All those in favor of PAH 25 post-disaster recovery works in the amount of $500,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Moving on to TP 105, assistance to farmers due to Tropical Storm Grace, $3 million. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to the Minister, can we get an explanation from the Minister as to, what the program is and how this assistance will be handled and who will be eligible for it, those sorts of things? What is the program in terms of assistance to farmers?
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Chair, through you, based on the assessment carried out to date, most significant impact was to the crop farmers. In particular, those farmers that produce with a lot of the fruit trees and the banana trees. Up to date, we have at least 145 farmers that were impacted by tropical storm. And we have at least 119 of those are actually crop farmers, and about 25 of them are large banana and plantain farm producers. So this funding will allocate to the farmers to help them to be able to meet their immediate income gap according to the assessment that is needed based on the level of damage to their farms and the size of their farms by what the grant will actually be for. All of this will actually, there's a criteria that they have to go through. It will be from whether you are actually a commercial farmer to more of a backyard farmer for the help and assistance, and depending on the size of the grant that you actually get. It's not a one-time grant. Basically, it's more like as a monthly stipend grant going through to get you through past the hurricane season, but also enough to be able to carry across where you can actually help pay your farm helpers and help assist where your loss of your damage were through these months.
Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you very much, sir, to the Minister. So then it would, based on your response, it would appear that, casual farmers would also be able to benefit from this, not just the registered farmers or licensed farmers?
Sorry, can you just repeat that question, sir?
I would say, reflecting on your response, then, or maybe I should frame it in the way of a question to you, that a confirmation that casual farmers, or what we describe as the backyard farmers, they would still be able to benefit from this program, or is it limited just to licensed farmers? And
this grant is for the licensed farmers and more for the commercial farmers, okay, those that have lost from their income.
Okay.
Sorry. Honorable Minister. Oh, sorry. Honorable Member for Red Bay.
Mr. Chairman, I just want to make a few observations, and before I do that, to really say what a tremendous job the Department of Agriculture is still doing in helping farmers through this very difficult time. They don't have enough resources, human resources, I mean, to really do the job that is called for, but they are going beyond to help. I have one of the bigger crop farms, I would say, certainly in the eastern districts. I have more than 1,200 fruit trees. And they came and helped for a whole day. They brought 6 men. And we had already started the process. And they worked like absolute slaves. That's the only thing I can say, to help. And they've been trying to give each, focusing on the commercial farms, each farmer at least a half day of assistance and guidance in how to try to save trees. We cut down too many trees in the aftermath of these storms over and over again. I have managed, I had more than 300 trees down, and I've only lost 4 that I could not save. So it can be done, but it's not cheap, and it requires a lot of labor. So whatever we can vote in terms of additional funding to the Department of Agriculture to allow them to help farmers survive, I am more than happy to support. The thing is, those who have plantain and banana, there's not really much you can do there besides cut them down, and they take 9 months before they bear. So they're going to need, people who rely on that as an income are going to need assistance. I am very lucky because I don't rely on the farm as my source of income. But for many farmers, that is their source or principal source of income. So let us understand that. I see a lot of criticism about giving money to farmers on social media in particular by people, I'm sure, who don't even know the extent of farming that it does take place here. And it is very difficult to make a living from farming anywhere in the world these days, but in Cayman it's increasingly difficult. So I'm very grateful to see this initiative and whatever else that can be done to help farmers, then I think we should do so.
Mr. Chair.
Honorable Member Button Down East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to applaud the effort in terms of assisting the farmers, but I wanted to throw a question in, and I hope that the minister is willing to answer in terms of assisting farming, and does the ministry have any appetite in terms or purchasing additional lands to concentrate on expanding the amount of farmers that we have here so we can sustain ourselves?
Minister for Agriculture.
Mr. Chair, through you, just to answer the Bordentown member from East question, we are looking for farmland, and this government is actually committed to looking for a lot of more farmland that we can find. If any one of them actually knows of farmland that is available, please don't hesitate to call us.
Honorable Member for Bordentown East.
Mr. Chair, thank you, and I want to thank the minister for his ministry's effort in seeking for additional farmlands.
Yeah.
Likewise, I would also support getting 200 more acres of land for affordable housing.
Mr. Chairman.
Honorable Member for West Bay West.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I got to ask these because I don't been in a caucus, so you will understand that I need to know. But just to say that there is I don't know how many acres, but quite a bit of acres that government owns in East End. Now, we took some of that to make the mental health residents, but there's still a lot of land left there, and hopefully the minister will check into it, because there's been a reluctance, it seems like, and I don't know the reasons why, but it seems a reluctance to utilize the land, and that's basically what it is, farmland. And hopefully that the minister and the ministry can, or the government, whomever it is, cabinet, whomever is going to do so, will look into it to see what can be done.
Minister of Planning and Agriculture.
Mr. Chair, through you, yes, we do have a significant portion of land in the Eastern District that could be used for farming. One of the things that I've come across is that not every farmer wants to go to the eastern side of the island to farm, especially he lives in West Bay. So I would ask that the Speaker of the House would help me try to find some property in the West Bay area so we could do some farming in his area, because a lot of his West Bay colleagues have asked me also about farmland in that area, if they could purchase in it.
Honourable Member for Cayman Brack East.
Just a comment and a request, Mr. Chair, quickly. I know that when we had done the teachers' salary review, the next step that I was planning when I had Minister of Agriculture was to look at the review of the salaries for Agriculture Department, because as we did our full review, we found that that was another one of the departments that were undervalued by the community. But we can see certainly with the Advent and the passing with Grace and Ida, which were just, in my respectful view, just warm-up exercises for other things that can be coming down the pipeline, if not this year, other years, based on global warming and all the other scientific evidence, that perhaps I might invite the Honourable Minister when things settle down and we get through this COVID uninvited guests that we have upon our shores, that perhaps you may want to look at that department, because as the member across the floor, Honourable Member, said, not just during storm times, but other times the Agriculture Department, especially their extension officers and other auxiliary officers, really go beyond the call of duty to help our farmers. And if we're to move towards national food security, we have to invest in our people.
Any other questions? Member Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I think, if my memory serves me well, the Minister had referred to this assistance not only being direct payments, but also assistance through helping farmers with replenishment of their stock by way of importation of trees or what have you. Could he expand on that if that is the case? Also, I know that on the government strategic policy statement, our intention were to try to plant more fruit trees across the island. Could he say whether or not, if there would be any intentions of importing any extra trees, not only this year, but potentially in the future, for that plan to take fruition?
Honourable Minister for Agriculture.
Mr. Chair, through you, the Agriculture Department imports trees on a yearly basis all the time. Right now, the Agriculture Department is actually looking into importing a lot more of the mango trees and the pear trees, and also whatever other kind of plants or trees that they are necessarily in need. I know that they are actually looking at that right now as we speak, of how to get that on a container here to help assist the farmers as quickly as possible, sir.
Honourable Member for Red Bay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, going back to the earlier point, the appeal by the Minister for Agriculture for information about land that may be available for farming. I sort of said, sotto voce, that the problem in districts like West Bay and even Bordentown, Savannah, and Georgetown is that the land has now become so valuable that it's very difficult to persuade people to use the land for farming. I mean, the best farmland in these islands was actually Savannah, Lower Valley, Georgetown, and West Bay. I am old enough to remember when cows used to be grazed where the courthouse is now. So Georgetown had some very fertile land, but the land value is just too high now. So I think the only way to avoid that situation continuing is if government does purchase land at whatever the going rate is now and reserve it for agricultural purposes. Otherwise, as the population continues to grow and the value of the property continues to increase across these islands, we're going to wind up with no land available for farming. I see it coming, very, very, very clearly. I mean, down in the area where I farm, which was my great-grandfather's property, in an area called Great Beach, halfway between East End and North Side, that land used to be almost worthless because it was so difficult to access. But now we've got paved roads in there, and the value of the land has gone up significantly. Of course, when you own it, you feel good about that. But the reality is that the more the value increases, I doubt my sons are going to carry on farming. And they're already teasing me about putting condominiums down in there. But this is the reality of the Cayman that we have now. So unless government actually goes out and makes a policy that is going to acquire 1,000 acres of land or whatever it is and reserve it for farming purposes, eventually the farming as we know it in Cayman is in Grand Cayman, leave Cayman Brac aside for the time being, is just no longer going to be viable at all.
Thank you very much, Honourable Member for Red Bay. All those, move to the vote. All those in favor of TP 105, assistance to farmers due to Tropical Storm Grace, 3 million, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. That concludes the appropriation for the Minister of...
Mr. Chair, just quickly, I just want to, would love to just thank everybody for their support. And I want to thank everyone that has participated in the disaster recovery, especially from the agriculture team and them that actually went out, and from those that were actually tracking the storms throughout the nights for us. I want to thank the men and women at the Public Works Planning Department, Agriculture, NRA, the private sector, and all those that actually went out to help and assist with everything that we've, to help make our lives a lot more easier. I just want to say thank you to all of them.
Okay, thank you very much. Colleagues, this is the last page, 13 we'll do just before taking the lunch break, and it has to be for the Ministry of Health and Wellness. First one, page 13, is TP 73, other health and cultural program assistant, to be increased by 750,000. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Quick question through you to the Minister, sir. This premium assistance program, has that been expanded in any way, or is it since it was implemented?
No.
Honorable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, through you, it has remained the same. We're just extending it to the end of the year.
No further questions, sir.
Thank you very much. All those in favor of TP 73, other health and cultural program assistant, 750,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Continuing on page 13, EI 53, Ministry of Health and Wellness, $1,330,026. Are there any questions? Honorable Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can we get an update from the Minister with regard to the status of the Solid Waste Management System program? And at some point, we would like to hear as well update on the long-term residential mental health facility and where that is at.
Honorable Minister of Health and Wellness.
I would leave my able team to respond on that for me. Can I ask them to elaborate on the solid waste side? Miss Nelly, Chief Officer Nelly Pucci.
Welcome, Chief Officer Pucci, and congratulations. I think this is your first time being confirmed as Chief Officer in Finance Committee. I will ask, just before you start your response, to just state your name and title for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. Nelly Pucci, Chief Officer of Ministry of Health and Wellness. To the question at hand, sir, with respect to the solid waste management system, as far as our ministry is concerned, that is still in progress. We have not received anything contrary to that program proceeding.
And the mental health, I think there was a second part of it, which is a mental health facility.
Mr. Chairman, through you, with respect to the mental health facility, that also remains in progress, and we have not received anything that states that we'll have any significant delays. We were looking maybe at Q1 of 2022, just due to some of the time constraints that we've had in terms of lockdown last year and other material shortages that we experienced earlier this year. But other than that, that program is still on track as well.
Honourable Leader of Opposition.
Thank you. Through you to the Chief Officer. I offer my congratulations to you. Well deserved. And I wish you much success. I'm very happy and proud for you today to hear that. So, but go back to the ISWIMs as well. You say it's continuing. I mean, can you give us, the committee, an idea of where we are in terms of the whole process now of the procurement of it? You know, we've seen quite a bit of work there at the in terms of the capping and whatnot, but can we get a little bit more information on when you're actually seeking to maybe break ground on the actual installation of the solid waste management, solid waste system, waste to energy plant?
Chief Officer Pucci.
Mr. Chairman, through you, with respect to the current ISWIMS program, we are continuing with the capping and remediation of the Georgetown landfill. So that's what you're seeing in progress now. That continues up until 2022. We have not yet reached financial close with respect to the mean waste to energy plant and that aspect of the program, so that we don't have an actual break date for that yet. We do have to reach financial close to be able to have that contract finalized before we can do that.
Honourable Leader of Opposition.
Thank you very much, sir. Through to the Chief Officer. Does that mean it is the timeline then for the commissioning and completion of this project then, is that now slipping further into the future?
Chief Officer Pucci.
Mr. Chairman, through you, the actual financial close date on that project is the end of September, so we've not yet reached that point.
Thank you for the clarity.
Honourable Member for Borden East.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my intent is to publicly congratulate Chief Officer Pucci on her confirmation as Chief Officer. Well deserved.
Thank you. Any other questions? If not, I'll take the vote. EI 53, Ministry of Health and Wellness, being increased by $1,330,026. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Colleagues, just to make a note, and let's all right, colleagues, let's moving on to the last page, page 14, CIN2, health insurance to civil service pensioners, being increased by 1.8 million. Are there any questions? Not, we'll take the vote. All those in favor of CIN2, health insurance to civil service pensioners, being increased by 1,800,000, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. Colleagues, we'll take the lunch break now to resume back promptly at 1:30. We just have one item left, which is the OE 140 that deals with the COVID stuff. Then after that, we try to conclude Finance Committee today and see if we can get a report back done today so we can start helping our people tomorrow. Thank you. Adjourn to 1:30.